coming, Hannah. We're recording now, and looking forward to hearing about the Wylye, which is obviously close to me because I'm in Salisbury, as you can see.
Yeah.
And really excited because this is our first one in Wiltshire, isn't it? The landscape recovery project. But so just to remind everybody, this is the highest tier of elms that I spent a lot of time talking about in the last few years. And Hannah's going to talk to us about how the Wylye project is going forward, and what the aims and ambitions are, and how it's going. So thank you so much, Hannah, for talking, because it's of great interest to us. Thanks.
Yeah,
So
great.
if you'd like to,
how many of you are local to the Wylye?
Peter's joined us. Peter's is in Tisbury.
Okay.
How local is local?
Well, the thing is, I like to open by confessing that I'm not that local either. So I just like to gauge the room to see if there are any.
Well,
yeah.
perhaps I should just explain. I'm Salisbury born and bred, okay, but I'm not kind of Wylye focused. I grew up on the Bourne, so on the other side of Salisbury. So, but I do know the Wylye down into Salisbury on the Nad, on the where it joins the Nadder and round Harnham, right as it goes down into Salisbury, and obviously going back up to Langford Lakes. So I'm quite familiar with the territory. So
okay.
Yeah.
I was in Brighton before, and I'm from Berkshire, so I'm really learning the area. I just do my best.
Okay.
Guys, if you put your name in the thing, sorry, where you come from, as well as your name in the thing at the bottom, that would be helpful, because then Hannah would see that we're spread right across Wiltshire, north to south, east to west.
Yeah, I can see Amelia's Warminster, so that's probably one of the most local.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Shall I start sharing? Shall I crack on?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Right. We did a test run of this before. Did that work? Is it the right screen? Someone just give me a flag. It's the right screen.
It's the presenter's version.
It's the big screen.
You just need to push on presentation.
Oh.
We've got the presenter's screen at the moment.
You've got the presenter's screen again. Okay, hang on 1 second. Oh, how did I do this before?
Did you go into display settings, top left? It says show taskbar, display settings.
I think I just need to tell it to look at the other screen. Hang on, we'll try again. Oh, I think I've got it right. Is that the one?
Yes, well done.
Yay, okay, brilliant. You get there in the end. It's always the same. Okay. Well, brilliant to speak to you guys. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk. This is actually my first talk to people that aren't farmers in the Wylye Valley, so it'll be really interesting to run this past you and see what you think. But the Wylye Valley Landscape Recovery is a round 2 landscape recovery project. So this is part of a series of pilot projects from Defra. So Wiltshire Wildlife Trust was successful in getting funding in the second round. The project kicked off in April. I joined the trust in April, so I'm quite new to the area and new to the trust, but it's a very exciting project. So to talk you through the background of how we got here in the first place. So there are 34 projects across England that are landscape recovery projects. Their aim is to accelerate the formation of mechanisms for private investment. So effectively what Defra are looking for is ambitious ways that they can achieve their nature and climate targets. They have a huge aim to raise £500 million annually for nature restoration by 2027, and then 1 billion annually by 2030. What they're looking to do is for us projects on the ground to find ways to bring in private money to fund the restoration works that we need to deliver, but also the ongoing maintenance. So at the moment, Defra are pouring quite a lot of money into countryside stewardship and sustainable farming incentive and are working at a farm level, but it's costing government quite a lot of money, and government cannot afford the work that's needed to achieve the outcomes that we really, really need in order to curb the climate crisis and achieve meaningful biological restoration. So they are looking for us on the ground to figure out effectively how we can get money from the private sector to fund these things. And this is the top tier of elms. So that diagram on the right, you can see there is The Environmental Land Management Scheme is set up as it's the Sustainable Farming Incentive, which is SFI, Countryside Stewardship, and then Landscape Recovery. Now, SFI and Countryside Stewardship both operate at individual land holding scale, and Landscape Recovery is that top tier because we're trying to find ways that we can fund nature restoration at significant scale. So this has come about after leaving the EU. We phased out the basic payment scheme, and this is the government's way of trying to achieve that scale that we need. It's important to mention it is a pilot project. They are giving us quite a big chunky amount of money to do the things that government effectively don't know how to do it. So they know what they would like. They know what they would like private money to fund, but effectively we are creating the mechanisms for bringing in that funding. So yeah, it's supposed to be a generationally significant opportunity for radical and large scale climate and nature restoration. So we were very fortunate to be successful in round 2. We were nearly successful in round 1. We were the first on the reserves list, so first on the waiting list, but didn't quite make it through. But the Wylye Valley was successful in round 2. And our vision is to create a river valley, a very diverse and rich river valley with crystal clear chalk stream water running through it, with lovely big densely vegetated margins and with naturally wetted floodplain. So our focus really is the chalk stream, but we have managed to get quite a bit of floodplain land into the project as well. And yeah, the dream scenario here is to have a very biodiverse, very healthy, very functional, reconnected floodplain. So that's our vision for the Wylye Valley. Here is a video of one of the best stretches of the Wylye Valley at present. It's really hard to see a truly diverse, truly functional chalk stream, but my manager, who's an expert at river restoration and chalk streams, said that this was a 7 out of 10. So this really this video shows what we're aiming to create across the whole Wylye Valley area. So this is our project area. That's Warminster in the top left, and it's 20 kilometres of the Wylye, stretching from Norton Bavant down to Langford Lakes. So Wiltshire Wildlife Trust is one of the landowners in the project. So we're looking at what we can do at Langford Lakes, and then it's a series of farms and private land holdings running between the two. We do unfortunately have a few gaps which we are looking to plug, but the idea is over time we will be able to form one large corridor, which is a restored connected habitat. So the aims of the project are to increase climate resilience, so an improved resilience to extreme flows, to low flows, and then temperature changes. Diverse, naturally functioning habitats, including potentially like re-meandering the channels, but also just increasing that connectivity between the channel and the floodplain. Species abundance and diversity, so we're looking at populations of fish, birds, invertebrates, plants, really anything and everything that we can enhance through this project, and also looking at the enhancing the habitat's ability to capture and retain harmful nutrients and pollutants. So those are our long-term objectives for this project, and we are in feasibility at the moment trying to figure out how we can achieve those things through our restoration works. The challenge really is, like many of our rivers across Britain, the Wylye has been dredged, it's been artificially straightened, and it's been polluted, and it does suffer from low flows from abstraction. All of the wildlife, such as river flies, Atlantic salmon, and more, have suffered as a result of these changes to the habitat, and invasive plant species in quite a lot of the areas are thriving. We did see a mink recently as well, caught in a trap, so there are quite a few invasive species on the Wylye that need addressing. And then the water meadows along the river have also disappeared. So whereas these used to be lovely big wet areas where wading birds could thrive, there's now limited opportunity for them. And this is a really lovely bit of the Chitton Brook. So this isn't actually the Wylye itself, but this is the Chitton Brook, which is a tributary, and it has these huge expanses of just very long straight channels, and it's, as you can see, where the fields are getting wet, there's no actual connection to the tributary itself. So this is kind of typical of the areas where we have quite a lot of potential to restore the river and the floodplain. So these are the project partners, or these are the teams. So we've got Wiltshire Wildlife Trust, who have a dedicated water team. So we've got all the expertise in-house we need to be looking at where the potential is for restoring the rivers and the wetlands. We've also got the Wessex Rivers Trust, who for them that is their bread and butter. So they have got a long history of working on the Wylye, and they're a brilliant partner to have, really helpful with our species monitoring and our river restoration planning. A very important partner is the Wylye Valley Farmers. So these are the farming cluster. They're actually an interesting cluster because they are independent, meaning that they don't get any money from government. So they are self-funded, which gives them the flexibility to do certain things that some of the official clusters don't get, but they're a very proactive group. We've got the Environmental Farmers Group, which are a very new organisation. They are looking at helping farmers to access the nature markets. So they're helping farmers to look at ways that they can sell ecosystem services on their land, but they have an interesting cooperative model where any profits that you might generate from trades get shared among all the different farmers. So we're working with them through this project to see if we can integrate any income from this project into their cooperative so that the benefits are shared. And then we've also got the Piscatorial Society, one of the world's oldest angling clubs. I'm sure you guys know them, with a focus on fly fishing, but they are a landowner in the project, but they also know the river really, really well and have been working for a long time in the local area to deliver quite a lot of habitat improvements and doing a lot of in-channel work. So they are ahead of the curve really when it comes to river restoration. So they know it really well. So yeah, just a little bit about the Wylye Valley Farmers. As I said, they are member-led and self-funded, so they are very independent, which is great. Their land covers 18,000 acres in the Wylye Valley. Not all of the landowners in the Wylye Valley Farmers are in the project. So in our project, we've only got landowners who own the chalk stream itself or who have floodplain. But there's quite a diverse number of farming types in there. So they've got cereals, fodder crops, beef, lamb, and many, many more. And yes, so we've got 19 of the Wylye Valley Farmers who actually own land in the area are in our landscape recovery scheme. And potentially that might increase as we're trying to add a few more on to fill some of those gaps. So here is a video of the River Wylye down at Stockton where it floods. And the point of this slide really is to show you this quote from Josh Stratton. So he is he's the chair of the Wylye Valley Farmers, who runs quite a large farm in the Wylye Valley. And really what he's saying through his quote is that actually because of the flooding in the floodplain, as it's supposed to flood, grazing and managing the land in that area is really difficult to farm. So what he's looking at is changing his model for his farm to deliberately integrate into their plans that this land is floodplain land and he shouldn't try and farm it in the same way that you would the other parcels. So he's looking now at biodiversity as an output. When he's looking at yield, he's looking at yield of wildlife and yield of species. So he's been a really instrumental person in getting all the other farmers on board. And yeah, so just to show kind of what the land naturally does in winter. And of course, the last winter was one of the wettest in history. So this is just demonstrating why it's really important to look at land use change for nature. So that's a bit of background. Where we're at now. So we're in what's called the development phase. So we are funded for 2 years from April 24 to April 26 to develop the project. And then if we are successful in developing a viable investable project, we will then transition hopefully to implementation. And those agreements we are thinking are going to be 30+ years for various different reasons to do with the income stream. So they are really looking at long-term projects. So we are hoping to transition in 2026 from development into implementation, but we just have the funding at the moment for the first 2 years. And in those 2 years, we have 6 specific projects that we need to do. So we need to produce 6 plans that we send to Defra to review. So when Defra are deciding if they're going to give us any money, any investment, and allow us to transition into that implementation phase, they will be looking at these 6 plans. So we'll be looking at project management and governance. So who in the long run will be the board that's governing this project, who will be making decisions. We're looking at ways that any project board can involve the farmers so that they can be involved and have a casting vote, and it's not just something led by the NGOs, it's something that's embedded into the community, which is great. There's a land management plan, so that's physically what we are going to do on the land. you know, are we going to get the diggers in and are we going to move the river? What actual works are we going to do? That's the expensive stuff. So that's what we're going to look at and cost up and figure out, yeah, what we can actually physically do with the land. We are doing monitoring and evaluation. So we're doing over the next 2 years quite a lot of baseline surveys to understand our ecology and our hydrology. And then we will be looking at what we need to do in the long term to track our progress, to make sure that the interventions we deliver are genuinely beneficial for nature, and how we'll keep that going. Site access is an interesting one. Some of the landscape recovery projects are looking at creating really ambitious access plans for enhancing access for the public onto the land. We don't really have particularly great access already in the Wylye, and unfortunately our landowners aren't particularly interested in creating it. But what we do have, luckily, is Wiltshire Wildlife Trust's owned Langford Lakes. So we have quite a potentially interesting opportunity there to do some quite interesting stuff to enhance access to the rivers, but also just generally increase access at Langford Lakes for the public. So we'll put a plan together for that. Stakeholder engagement is another interesting one. You could go above and beyond with that. It's sort of the sky is the limit, but what we're really looking at is making sure that all the local people, organisations, businesses, community groups that have any interaction with the river, or any who rely on the river as part of their work, or people who just live near it and see it, making sure that everybody knows, everybody who needs to know about this project knows, gets a chance to have their say, and that actually when we get to the time, hopefully, where those works begin, that everybody's informed and everyone's on board. And then this is the really, really chunky one, is the blended finance and business model. So this is, how much does it all cost? How much money could it potentially bring in? How do we share any money that's going into the land? What are the various different sources? It's going to be private finance, hopefully, also layered up with some public finance. Do we get some corporate donors in? Can we bring in fundraising through traditional grants routes? It's that really kind of nitty-gritty funding model for each landowner and the project as a whole. So that's a really chunky piece. And those all together is what we present to Defra at the end when they make their decision. So in terms of restoration options, what we actually are planning to do on the river, there are the physical interventions to the channel. So you can see on the right there, you've got the channel once probably was on the right, probably dead straight. And what we're looking at doing is introducing wiggles to improve that habitat diversity and putting it back to really how it naturally wants to be. So remeandering any sections of river that are straight, altering the bank to improve its connectivity with the floodplain. So where they've been dredged quite a lot, often where they were dredged, they would lump the spoil on the side, and it's created these bunds. So actually when the river rises, it doesn't naturally spill out on the floodplain. So there are some quite easy wins we can do there to recreate that natural habitat. There are a few opportunities to remove barriers. So there are a few weirs. So we're going to have a little look and see whether it's feasible to remove those. And then some in-channel works, such as putting trees in the river, stabilising the banks, things like that, to just improve that habitat diversity. So those are the things we are likely to physically go in and do to the river. And then on the floodplain itself, we've got some quite big fields to play with. So we've got big stretches of arable and some maize, where actually it would be quite easy to revert those to create lovely water meadows. We're going to be reducing, hopefully, the grazing intensity on the meadows that exist. So where we've got some kind of more intense dairy or beef, actually could we change it to a slightly less intense grazing regime? And where some cattle are actually able at the moment to directly access the river, which is kicking quite a lot of silt and soil into the river, could we bring those fences back, put drinkers in, and allow the river to a little bit more room to breathe? We're looking at potentially creating wet woodlands and establishing some active floodplain marsh. So just trying to recreate the river valley of the past as much as is feasibly possible in a modern farmed landscape. So what does implementation actually look like? So if, and this is a big if we are successful in raising the funding that we need, during implementation, parts of the river may look like this on the right. So there may be periods of time where it looks like a big muddy mess. And this is just the early stages of a river restoration project, before it's had a chance to vegetate over and before the wildlife's had a chance to settle back in. So it will be restoration works to restore the river channel, long-term monitoring of our habitats and species, and checking that these interventions are actually delivering what we plan for them to deliver, and making sure that, you know, as we go along, do we need to adapt anything? There will also be quite a lot of time and money spent on setting up legal contracts to make sure that the landowners who've signed up to this are actually willing to commit to this in the long term, because it's quite a lot of effort and yeah, a big investment, and you want to make sure that nature is given the time it takes to sink in, and to, you know, you don't want someone coming along in 5-10 years and deciding they want to plant it up again with a crop, or, you know, so making sure we've really got that secured in the long term, and that works for the farmers and their business plans and the families who own the land. And then, yeah, that intersects quite a lot with the blended finance plan. So making sure that this is all financially viable in the long term for the landowners involved, which is all quite complicated stuff. Can't do a presentation from Wiltshire Wildlife Trust without touching on Langford Lakes. So we are really proud that the furthest downstream site in the project is Langford. We've got the whole of Langford in. So while there is access to the public there, access for the public there at the moment, the potential is actually quite big to step that up and to create more, you know, more access. So that might be actually creation of boardwalks and better provision of access facilities generally, but it also could mean setting up events and potentially bringing in money for staff to, you know, to get activities for children or specific groups. You know, the kind of possibilities are endless. We really need to understand what the demand is and the need is. But where there's habitat works already being planned for specific target species, such as curlew, like a big ambition for Langford Lakes is, could they attract curlew? Actually creating a much bigger connected habitat network. This could really benefit what Langford is trying to do. So where they're struggling to get certain species in, this new Wylye Valley floodplain might help to bring in those target species. And then where there are some species already there that are exciting but in low numbers, such as the lapwing. Maybe I think the last recording for lapwing last year was maybe that there was one pair nesting. It just gives them potentially that room to expand and that room to breed. So it might help populations stabilize, but there's quite a lot of exciting species work happening. So we're really hopeful that, yeah, what's happening at Langford will be complemented by this project, which is great. And then ways that people can get involved. So at the moment, we are in the really early stages still of planning and figuring out what we're doing. So we haven't gone out to the community yet to invite people in to help. But we are going to need local people's input into all of these plans, really. So it would be really helpful if people were able to, at the appropriate time, to let us know their thoughts on what benefits this project could bring to local communities and businesses, because we want to maximise those benefits. So what really are they and how can we maximise them? And then what's another really important aspect of this is kind of co-designing the project with local people. So we don't want it to be an NGO or charity-led kind of like, oh, we've given you this and that's it. We want to be co-designing it with the local people. So what ways can we bring people in? Obviously we need the technical experts to tell us where we can put the river. We can't all have a vote in that because there are rights and wrongs to that answer. But when it comes to long-term monitoring, when it comes to engagement, are there things that, you know, really tangible ways that local people could help? Site access is a really useful one. I don't know how many people are local enough to be able to help with this, but as someone who's new to the area, I don't know particularly how people are accessing and using the river now. So we'd love to know more about, you know, who is going there, why are they going there, what are the footpaths like, you know, how could we improve it? And we can think quite outside the box with this one. We think, you know, Defra's only steer has to be, they told us, just be ambitious. They won't tell us how much money they're likely to give us. They just say, be ambitious, give us a really bold, exciting plan. So we want to look at, yeah, really fun new ways we could access the Wylye. And then excitingly, we're also hoping up to open our species and habitat surveys to volunteers, probably starting from next year. We are about to embark on our first beaver survey on the Wylye. So I don't know how many of you will know, but we do have some beavers on the river. We don't know where they came from. We haven't seen them physically. I think the first one, well, one has been seen because it got tangled up in an electrofishing survey last year. So it was kind of outed by surprise, but we've seen signs of them all along the Wylye, lots of nibbled willow and things like that. So we are very excited to see kind of the first results of that survey. And we'd love to be able to bring in local people to help with that going onwards. So 2025, we think, will be a likely time frame that we can bring people in. And that is me. So thank you very much for your time, and happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you, Hannah. That is an incredibly ambitious project, isn't it, actually?
It certainly
And
is.
with my background, I'm particularly worried about the legal tie-ins for such a long period, especially intergenerationally in
Yes.
farming families. So I guess that's not news to you as an issue. I was thinking, goodness, the farmer retires and the son thinks, I want out of this. There are really big issues there, aren't there, about the long-term nature of the project and the funding.
Yes.
But anyway, Bill's got a question. So would you like to fire away, Bill?
Well, as usual, I've got a million questions, but I'll try and focus on what big things. Firstly, one, have you met a group called LEAF, L-E-A-F?
I've heard of them, and they have been in contact with the Wylye Valley Farmers. I don't think I've spoken to them.
LEAF are an environmental group who got together in 2021, I think it was. They're called in Local Environmental Action Friends, and they're based themselves almost on the Wiltshire Wildlife Trust site, the Langford Lakes. So that there is probably more than, I don't know, half a dozen, maybe a dozen people there that could actually help you who live really locally.
Okay, brilliant.
The chair of LEAF has recently left. She's gone elsewhere, and I haven't got a new contact yet. But if you look it up, look at the website, you'll find them. I suggest they could provide you, and they'll be very willing to help with resources.
Excellent.
So please, if you could do that, that would be good. And we're going to see if we can put a shout out for our members and see whether there's anyone who could provide you with some support as well in the local area. I guess my two, you've spoken about beavers, so that's good. There were a couple of things. I guess I'm on the other side to Claire. I'm interested in how finance is generated from wildlife. Get financial yield from wildlife. That sounds to me sort of the wrong thing. We kind of allow grass shooting on the Wylye. I don't know quite how you get a financial yield unless a long-term investor is coming along and saying, I will invest here every year for X, like the pension company or whatever. But they've got to get a return out of it, so I don't quite know how it all works.
So there are sort of three main ways. So I'm taking carbon out of it. Carbon and water are two sort of separate things, but when it comes to wildlife, there is biodiversity net gain. So projects like ours are able to access money that comes from developers to mitigate the damage through development. So there's biodiversity net gain, which we're all sort of waiting to see what the demand is for that, what the likely income is. There are a lot of projects gearing up, doing all the right surveys, just waiting for buyers of net gain to come along. So that's a regulated market. It's a relatively safe bet as and when that truly does kick off. Quite a lot of projects for many years now, maybe 5 years, have been waiting for biodiversity credits to kick off. So that's slightly different. It's not a regulated market. It's not a compliance market. It would be a voluntary market. So the idea behind biodiversity credits would be that there are companies looking to buy credits, whether it's to offset damage in their supply chain, whether it's companies that are looking to do the right thing because it's part of their brand, potentially greenwashing potential. We have to be careful. So the biodiversity credits market is very much emerging. There are lots of different companies going out there trying to develop different types of credits. There are a few different schemes you can look at, and they assess biodiversity in different ways and they sell it in different ways. That's a really new thing that has not kicked off in the UK yet. I think the first deal in the UK was announced last month, but before then the only deal had been in Switzerland, and that was pretty much it for Europe. So we're waiting to see what that's going to be. But I was at a conference 2 months ago where the general consensus seemed to be that actually all the money we thought was coming in via biodiversity credits may never appear, because companies are getting more interested in how they can invest in damaging less, basically, by looking at their supply chains. So we're all waiting to see. That's not a big part, that's not any part actually of our business case, because we can't see it happening. And then the third option is basically like a corporate donation. So it's impact investing, where an investor comes along and says, we like what you're doing, we want to help you, we are going to give you a certain amount of money. Some of these are attached to a return on investment, some of them aren't, it depends. So there have been quite a few deals done in this way already, but really it's been on a very informal basis. So there have been companies that have invested quite a lot of money, several millions, into farmland, looking at their motivation is stabilizing their supply chain while doing the right thing for nature. But it's not at all regulated. The ways that they monitor, some of them don't actually really monitor the impact. It's a little bit of a free-for-all, really. It's starting to change because companies are realizing that actually, if you're going to invest big bucks in restoring nature, you probably should do surveys to check that it worked. So again, we're waiting to see how that's going to work. But the only real regulated market at the moment is biodiversity net gain. But a lot of these, when Defra announced landscape recovery, they hoped that these markets would be a lot more developed by now, and they aren't, which is causing all sorts of trouble for people who are trying to develop business plans, because we're developing financial models based on things that might appear. So it's very much a watch this space still.
Okay, I mean, I think the BNG one is a big issue actually for us, because one of the things we have a concern about with biodiversity net gain is there may be a number of genuine people out there who are trying to do better with that money, but it's become a free-for-all in terms of landowners selling to long-term investors who are then selling that area off as a biodiversity net gain and then playing the market with it. And also a lot of the BNG stuff ends up remote from where the development is taking place, which of course has to happen in cases like yours.
Yeah.
And the risk there is that somebody will claim biodiversity net gain, or say a development in Wiltshire that is in Scotland or Wales or somewhere else. So the Wiltshire community do not get that benefit.
Yeah.
And what part of the NPPF we're responding to is actually about that. And we're saying we want our biodiversity net gain in our county.
Yeah.
So it's looking to try and get the developers who are going to put 40,000 houses into our, or more, according to the Labour Party, into our county, provide all the biodiversity net gain from that to Wiltshire or as local to the sites as possible.
Yeah. Well, one of the steps in our project, so when we are speaking to potential buyers and potential investors, as a project, we are responsible then for taking the information we learn from the investors and buyers and then presenting it to the landowners and the stakeholders in the project. And we will say to them, are you happy with potentially accepting money from these different organisations? So there'll be a whole due diligence step where everyone involved in the project will get to look at that kind of information and say, okay, well, where is this money coming from? How do we feel about this? And we've had some of the farmers express quite strong opinions about who they will and won't accept money from. And they are, for example, one of them was very much not interested in taking any carbon offset money. So that kind of level of thinking is there. They aren't, a money hungry group that will just take investment from whoever. They do deeply care about where it comes from. So we will be looking at that as part of our blended finance plan, where it comes from. And
Are they concerned because carbon offsets are such a crap market in terms of OBT and all the other stuff, or is it just a principles issue that he doesn't want to take carbon?
I think it was
offsets at all.
I think it was to do with the recent kind of literature that's gone out to show that actually of all the money invested in carbon, it hasn't delivered the benefit that they said it would. So quite a lot of activities have been paid for that have not sequestered the carbon that they committed to. So that quite a lot of those examples have decreased certainty and confidence in those markets, and that's quite well known now through the media. So it was that just hesitance of, okay, well, we don't really want to be taking money from that. So they are thinking about it.
It's got a very bad name, so I can understand why.
Yeah.
Okay, really interesting to understand that and follow that through in the future, and whether we can leverage B&G onto the developers that come into the county, maybe through the council, to say, look, we've got a big scheme going on there. If you want to buy something, go to them because it's in our county. So there is opportunity. I don't know if you talked to the council about it yet, but it's certainly an opportunity there from a planning perspective.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Tony.
Thank you. Yeah, very interesting talk, because I'm involved a little bit of doing some work on the, well, indirectly on the Kennet. So there's some parallels going on there.
Yeah.
So questions perhaps about the actual work itself. I'm getting a sense, I could see on the photographs there's some sort of archaeology there, like ridge and furrow and possibly water meadows. Is that right? So is there any, how are you addressing that? Are you, I mean, was the river straightening happened when the water meadows were put in? Or, so are you trying to sort of use the water meadows actually as a way of dealing with the sort of flood alleviation and seasonal floods?
My answers on this are going to be slightly limited, as I'm not one of the water experts on the team, but I can just do my best. We've had an archaeological appraisal done. That's an essential part of our land management planning. So we've got a kind of traffic light map that shows in like red and green and yellow where we've got archaeological historic features. And so we need to be aware of that for any planning applications we might want to put in for the works later down the line. So the team members that are going to be looking at the ecological potential, so where you might re-meander or where you might do whatever, they'll be doing that in parallel with looking at those historic maps. As we're walking around, we are looking to see signs of the old water meadows, because it's a really nice part of the story and a really nice part of, of the whole project. If we can actually link it in with those historical features and aim at, it's not actually to restore it back to, we're not aiming for a particular point in time. It's not trying to get rid of the water meadows and the drainage. It's nothing to do with that. And actually, if we can incorporate some of those old systems into the project, that would be really nice. But we're basically at the very early stages of figuring out where they are and what we can do.
Right. And just another quick question, really, well, hopefully, is when you're going to be realigning or re-wiggling or whatever it is, the term now, for the rivers, how are you going to keep, being a chalk stream, obviously it's very susceptible to sediment. So how what techniques are you using to keep it clean, do you know, or will you be using?
Oh, that's too specialist for me. Okay. Right. That I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that one. I hear people talk about sediment traps, but I do not know. We are very much in the early stages of looking at whether we will even move it at all, because there are quite a lot of constraints, such as roads and farm infrastructure and stuff. So that's very much one for next year when we get into that detailed phase of. And then there's also 2 layers of what's possible, but then what the farmers will say yes to. So it's kind of, we cross that bridge when we get there. But hopefully the guys at Wessex Rivers Trust are experts in that.
Presumably sure the farmers are quite varied in their wish to engage in this wholesale change.
They are. Some of the farms are a lot bigger than others, but luckily one of the biggest landowners in the project is the most excited. And so what I'm planning to do, and it's already happening naturally without my doing it, is that they are getting a little bit competitive of who can do the most ambitious project. So we're just going to play on that, and then we're taking them to other sites as well, other chalk stream restoration sites and other projects, to say, oh, well, look what's been done here. Do you think we can do better? Because it works apparently. Apparently it's quite a good technique. So we'll see if it works.
Okay. Thanks, Hannah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just before I go back on to Amelia, just talking about the archaeology and the water meadows. Down in Salisbury, we have a guy called Hadrian Cook. I don't know if, and so he is the with the Harnham Water Meadows Trust, and does the drowning of the meadows. So he is a incredibly knowledgeable landscape engineer. So, but I guess your water team would probably know about Hadrian, because I
Do you think they would?
I don't know, but he's.
You can always put us in contact, and then we can see.
Yeah. Yes, maybe. Yes. So would you like that? Shall I
That'd be great.
ask him whether he's sort of flagged this up at all? I
Yeah.
should have. I was this morning trying to think of people who would be interested. And he didn't cross my mind, unfortunately. Yeah. But I'll ask him. Yeah. Okay. Amelia.
Hi. So I went to a talk about the health of the River Wylye recently, and there was some discussion about the fact that there's quite a lot of pollution from the headwater at the source of the Wylye, and I just wondered what scope you had. I know obviously you're only concentrating on a particular stretch of the Wylye, but I just wondered what scope you had to affect the river health from source.
Yes, so through the project, we can only actually directly impact what's happening on the landowners in our project. So that's when it comes to the interventions we can only really impact that land in the scheme. However, through the scheme, through our kind of stakeholder engagement, we may be able to do some work with the water companies. Actually, Wessex Water would be an obvious target for us thinking about investors for the future. So we would like to be reaching out to them quite soon to talk about what interest they might have in supporting the river. There's a few different nutrient issues going on in the Wylye, but the main one that we might be able to resolve in a way that actually helps us to generate income is, so I don't know if you guys know about nutrient neutrality, but effectively we can get essentially get income for managing the land in a way that helps to capture nutrients. And the biggest nutrient that's a problem in the Wylye is phosphates. But we're doing long-term monitoring now on the Wylye to figure out what the levels are, sort of how much do they fluctuate in different conditions such as rain or dry periods. But I also understand that the headwaters of the Wylye are green sand, and apparently green sand is naturally high in phosphate. So we need to figure out what the sources are and what that natural fluctuation is. And when we've kind of got that baseline data, we will then know if there's any hotspots that we need to kind of look at, if there are any outfalls or any really likely any really likely kind of inputs, and then we take it from there really. But it's not a direct activity that's funded in this project. We are funded to look at the ecology as a whole and to look at our land holdings, but that kind of next step of looking at water quality isn't something we're funded to do, but we can kind of nudge Wessex Water through this project to engage with us on it, and we can potentially work with them together.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering if you could just talk quickly what you mean by active floodplain marsh.
Oh, another technical question. I actually, all I know about active floodplain marsh is according to the biodiversity net gain habitat kind of matrix. So you're looking at the habitats that you start with and the habitats that you could end up with. Active floodplain marsh is just one of the habitat types in there that we know the River Wylye and its floodplains historically could have been and would have been. And so it's a habitat that we don't have here anymore. So it's one of the habitats that we would be looking potentially to recreate because it supports the diversity of species. So it's just one of the potential lists on our list. It's one of the potential habitats that we might be able to recreate. And I understand that kind of nationally it's relatively scarce. So we potentially have the opportunity to restore it.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay, just before I move on to Luke, just what has come past my attention recently is the issue of pollution relating to pesticides, veterinary pesticides in water. I don't know if everybody else is aware of that. So the amount of pollution and the devastation being caused by these two chemicals coming off as a result of treatment for dogs and pets. So anyway, I just mentioned that because I was a bit horrified by what I heard about that. Luke.
Promised to be nice. So mine are all about baselining.
Okay.
Because any natural habitat fluctuates throughout the year. So you could choose an ample time of year and an ample point to take your baselining, so you don't have to, you can achieve quite a lot, but you actually don't achieve a lot because it's ever shifting.
Yeah.
Is there an approach kind of you're taking at the moment, or you've very much said you're at the beginning of this story and this kind of transition, is my first question. And then my next one is going back to something you avoided by saying we're not doing with carbon, but I'll come back to that. But yeah, just the baselining kind of thing.
Okay.
How is it kind of being navigated?
Yeah.
And as we're talking about what movements of water, how are you navigating that?
Okay, so baselining question on species. We have sort of two different categories of baselining. So there is the baselining that we are doing, and this one of the good things about this project having Wiltshire Wildlife Trust and Wessex Rivers Trust is that their primary driver is meaningful restoration. So it's really good to have the monitoring in the hands of the guys that really care about the species, not the income. So that's quite useful. So they, Wessex Rivers Trust, are really leading on the baselining. So they were already doing a project on the Wylye called the Wider Wylye. So some of the monitoring happening from that is just effectively being expanded. So there are river fly surveys happening throughout the project area. They are going to be doing some fish surveys as well. They are looking at macrophytes, so that's aquatic plants. What else is happening? Well, that's the primary focus of the river. Then sort of looking at habitat surveys, they are looking, so they're doing something called morph surveys. Don't know if you know those, but looking at the morphology of the river. So you go along the stretch of the Wylye and you look at the banks and how degraded they are and how healthy the vegetation is.
Yeah, some of that and from riparian legislation. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
And then biodiversity net gain surveys for the floodplains. So they are primarily botanical. So they'll look at look at the grasses, look how diverse they are. So those are the core monitoring activities that we're doing for our baseline. We're in an interesting position with landscape recovery where there's not enough budget for you to survey the whole area. So we're 800 hectares, which I should have mentioned actually, but we're 800 hectares, which actually for landscape recovery is quite small. I think one of the projects is 30,000 hectares, so they get quite big. But our survey budget does not allow us to do the whole thing. So we have to pick a kind of representative sampling approach, which we haven't outlined perfectly yet. So what we're doing this year is trialing it. We're doing a small chunk of the monitoring and we're trialing it. And then when we're happy that we've got it right, we'll do the bulk of it next year. But what I'm kind of encouraging our team to do is remember that some of these surveys are genuinely about the river and is the ecology right, and making sure that you've kind of got that full picture. But some of the surveys you're doing are to satisfy the needs of buyers and investors, and it's really important to remember the difference. So there are those kind of two categories. So it's making sure, and luckily also just to add, the way that the Defra paperwork is set up, they've embedded that into their thinking. So they have quite a lot of core indicators that we have to monitor so that they can be satisfied in-house that the quality of the project is high. So we've not just tailored it to what will bring in money, but actually that we've focused on everything that we need to focus on. Does that answer that one?
That's a beautiful answer, and I will happily take that on. Okay. So my next one is a little bit more, it kind of highlights to what Bill was just saying a bit about spending in the local areas and stuff like this. Why are some of the farmers not insetting as part of this project? And we are looking for investments of offsets. Is it because you may have already noted it, these farmers are smaller, don't have the capital, don't have the ability to do that, so it has to be looked at the economic model. But yeah, that would be one of my questions. And more widely about carbon is the fact that water sources are being looked at the moment for heat pumps, all sorts of sorry, this is my job really.
Yeah.
All about carbon. And kind of land management changes with agrivoltaics, all this other stuff, which is going to bring a whole other layer. And yeah, kind of the carbon factor being pushed to one side.
Okay.
Because if you're going to disturb the ground as well, you're going to release a huge amount of carbon. You then noted that you said, oh, we might not do that. So
okay, so the reason for not looking at carbon is, well, I think there are a few reasons. There's decreased confidence in the markets anyway, because as we know, the investment hasn't delivered the gains.
Of course.
We don't naturally have a very carbon rich habitat. So quite a lot of the landscape recoveries are focused on tree planting and woodland restoration or peat restoration. We don't think that chalk habitats and chalk floodplains are particularly carbon rich. There's not much research on it. So it doesn't seem like a particularly viable route for us to sell carbon anyway, which is useful. But also selling carbon, you have to be of a particular size for your for it to be worth it. So there's a minimum kind of project size, and us being 800 hectares, we are actually really tiny. So you have to pay a fee to be accredited. So actually for us, it just doesn't look financially viable, which is quite handy. I mean, what we don't know, and just to caveat that, is that there are projects looking at you might not sell carbon through the regulated market, but there are options to sell a biodiversity credit or a carbon credit with other benefits stacked on top. Not stacked, I have to be clear about this, bundled in. But when they're bundled in like that, they are not regulated. So it might be that we can sell one type of credit with another bundled on top. It wouldn't actually contribute to that organizations, to the buyer, it wouldn't contribute towards their internal targets. They couldn't claim, oh, we bought this much carbon, but it sometimes makes it a more attractive option for them to say, oh, look, we did this good thing, but they can't claim it in their books. So that it gets quite complicated. But carbon as a primary credit for us is not looking viable via the regulated markets.
Cool. Okay.
However, there are rewilding projects now that have sold them via other means. So it does get complicated, and who knows what will happen in a year. We don't know.
Of course, yeah. The offsetting market as a whole is littered with issues, especially if you're, going back to Bill's kind of example, if you are in the UK and you offset yourself into another country, you are potentially disallowing the own country to do what it needs to do to itself. So yeah.
And then the other question was insetting.
No, so, that was. But yes, that was really it. But why farmers might not do it, or is that conversations that might come out just going along the line?
Yeah, we might look at insetting for biodiversity net gain. So it might be that we've got some larger landowners who might want to develop. And so in that case, they might not want to sell all of their potential BNG biodiversity net gain units. They might want to hold on to some. But we are so early days that we do not know at the moment. So yeah, all options on the table still.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for not being too mean. I was worried when you opened with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's been fascinating, and I'm always interested when we have speakers, Hannah, about their background, because what this is telling us is you have to have a really good grasp of economics. And I just wondered if you're primarily an economist or primarily an ecologist. What would you say?
Molecular microbiologist. So yes, molecular and cellular biologist by trade. So completely irrelevant to all of this.
Okay, so you
all learned on the job. Yeah.
Okay, with a fresh start.
Yeah.
Oh, Jackie, have you got a question? Some of your hands up.
I just had a quickie about whether you found invasive crayfish.
Oh, I'm pretty sure the Wylye is riddled with them. Yeah.
Yeah, and how are you going to manage those?
I don't think anyone knows how to manage them yet. That's the sad thing. I don't think that there's any active plans along the Wylye or many areas locally to manage crayfish, are there? Because I think that they're finding that if you take the adults out, it helps the younger ones to proliferate. So that's not helpful. So I think it's very much like nationally, they don't know how to control them. So while they're getting it wrong, people have decided to back off. I think the theory is, a lot of people say, well, if you restore the habitats and then the species within them, that the ecosystem will balance itself out. But that's a hope. I think we're just waiting to find out what kind of the national picture is before we act on crayfish. But yeah, I think there's quite a lot of people enthusiastically going and picking up all the big ones, thinking they're doing well, and really.
But we were supposed to be eating them, weren't we? And then they actually discovered there was a very lack of appetite to have anyone prepared to prepare them for human consumption.
And I was
China to do that.
And I was chatting to someone the other day who said he was against the eat to beat policy. because in order to get it right, you have to be very clear about what a signal crayfish is and a white-clawed crayfish. And apparently there was a family of people who set off really keen to go and get some signals because they were going to eat them, but they got the wrong ones and they ate our native. So I think you've got to be very careful.
I wasn't looking at that as a solution. I just felt it was a very sad cause for why we're in this situation.
I know. No, I met somebody also who was looking at kind of like, how can we make money out of this? It's like unlimited food.
Yeah.
But it's unlimited food you'd have to boil really heavily with lots of salt. It's not very appealing, is it?
and dare I ask, how about voles? So you said you have mink, because
we have mink, but I've never seen water voles in my life, and I'd never seen evidence of them until I worked on the Wylye. And I was walking along some of the farms and I said to somebody, what are those? And it was the ecologist who works with Wylye Valley Farmers, and he said, oh, that's water vole footprints. Couldn't believe it, because I'd never seen them. And there were quite a lot of them, so they are still there. There are some lovely quiet stretches of the Wylye where there's no access, where the margins are really good and they're really thick. So I think there are some places where they've hung on quite well. So hopefully this project will be quite a boost for them.
Because we used to have a lot on the Kennet and Avon Canal. We're based in Devizes, and my husband was just part of a survey a couple of months ago, and they found absolutely no voles, which was really sad because there used to be lots.
But in East Anglia, they've done a really good job of eradicating mink. So it can be done if you try hard enough, persistently.
Yeah.
So it can be done, but
yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, are we done with questions?
I've got another quick one.
Oh,
it's all right.
Thank you, Bill.
I'll allow that. So, Wiltshire Wildlife Trust have an area at Langford Lakes where you can go, and effectively, once you're a member, it's free to enter. Is there any thought about making parts of the river accessible for a fee? So in other words, well, so that you can go and enjoy nature and you can wander along the riverbanks, but you have to be a member of whatever to actually do it. I'm just thinking of a way of generating income that actually is solid income that comes from punters more than risk, trying to get in for long-term investment.
So along the river, there's currently no public access. I walked it for the first time, that stretch along the river at Langford the other day, and it's currently managed by, I can't remember which angling club, but there's an angling club or syndicate that manage it. And so one of the things we might look to do is get some initial kind of capital investment to enhance the access there. So it's quite bumpy. It definitely wouldn't be wheelchair accessible. It wouldn't be very friendly for anyone with reduced mobility. So what we might do, I'm going to discuss this with the team at Langford, is if we could get the money in to enhance that access along there, could we potentially allow access, but in a way that would work with the fishing club? So at certain times of the year, maybe in certain seasons, could you do guided tours, that kind of thing? Because I think there's also potentially a bit of kind of worry about allowing, because it's quite well shaded, there's quite a lot of trees up and everything, you can't see it. So the guys working at Langford wouldn't be able to spot an issue there if they saw it. So it's kind of for public safety reasons as well. Could we have guided tours there and guided walks and things like that? So that could potentially bring in some revenue for the trust as well. So kind of just a bit of capital investment at the start, but maybe it could be self-sustaining in the long run, could be quite good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
I mean, just on that topic, I'm increasingly aware of what's going on here in Salisbury, and just locally we've got somebody doing sort of ecological walks freelance. She seems to be making a success of it, so I get that there is a great market for that, I think, isn't there?
Definitely.
An increasing market that people will pay for experience, won't they? They will pay for experiences,
especially if the beavers start to do their thing, because that would be exciting. That would attract a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, welcome Maureen, who's joined us. So sorry Maureen, we're just about to finish as far as Hannah's concerned, but we've recorded, haven't we? So you'll be able to catch up with her talk.
Claire, Peter wants to speak. Peter's got his hand up.
Peter. Oh, Peter, sorry. You've gone up to the top corner and I didn't see you. Yeah.
No, I've got masses of questions and comments, but I'll just keep it to one. And that's
Okay.
because you're talking about public access, and that was the footpath between Wylye and Fishton de la Mare is a really good public access. Very it's got it's on a lovely bit of river, but it is there and back. It'd be lovely to have
Okay.
extend it or create a permissive path to make a return route.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so that's one of the options as well, where the landowners don't necessarily want to create new vast paths along their stretches of in their farms. Actually, could we just enhance the kind of the circular loops and things like that? So that's a really, thank you. I didn't know about that one.
Thank you.
Okay, written that down. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Hannah, thank you so much. That's so fascinating. And as I say, it really illustrated so well the complications of Alps. Oh, I just had a very quick question, which is, as I understand it, the budget is for the lower tiers of elms is not being used, and it's likely to be swallowed back up into the treasury. Is that what is the word on the street? That money is going to disappear?
I don't know. So for the first round, they didn't have a cap. So they put forward what they thought it was going to cost. I'm pretty sure this is what I've heard. They didn't have a cap. It kind of costs what it cost. Then for round 2, we're capped at 750,000. I've asked for a budget increase because they ask you to set these budgets quite a long time ago. And actually, when you get to it, the contractor costs have changed and all sorts of things have changed. So I've had a look, and all I know is that there's things happening behind the scenes at Defra that we don't quite know about yet. So I don't currently know what the financial situation is. So yeah, can't comment, not sure. They are still optimistic that they'll be around 3, but we haven't heard. So I'm just waiting to see.
Okay.
I feel your pain.
Okay. Well, very, very, very best of luck with the whole project, Hannah. It's a
Thank you very
fantastic thing,
much.
and it's so wonderful to have it, near to me, because these guys do all these things. They all seem to be very, very far away. So I was very excited when I heard that they said it was the first project in Wiltshire. Thank you very much. We'll be carrying on just with a chat. So feel free to carry on with us or disappear.
Okay.
As you
Can I
wish.
just ask, Hannah, would you come back in, I don't know, 9 months' time and tell us how brilliant you've progressed?
Yeah,
It's a
definitely.
fascinating discussion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I will do.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and the other thing is you did mention earlier on about help that you would appreciate. So that's an evolving thing, I guess. So do get in touch with us
Yes.
if that's
I'll-
something we can, because we have people dotted here, there, and everywhere, and
Yes.
we have people. Each of us knows other people who aren't necessarily in WCA meetings, but are in other things. So
I'm just popping
I
the
think
email
we're quite a
address
good
in the chat. You've got,
yes.
if anyone wants to get in contact about ways to help, that's our shared inbox. So just pop us a message anytime. But what we'll be doing is, as and when we're sort of ready to onboard volunteers for something specific, it'll be going out on kind of Wiltshire Wildlife Trust social media and website and things like that. We do also have a website, so wylyeValley.org. I'll pop that in there as well. It's not live just yet, so any updates and things will be on that as well. But I'd be delighted to come back in a few months' time, and yeah, 9 months sounds sensible. We can let you know what we've managed to get on with. But thank you very much for listening to me and for your very good questions. Some nice technical ones in there. Active floodplain marsh was a good one, so I'll have to look up what that means. But thank you very much. It's been lovely to speak to you and see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for
Brilliant. Thank
coming
you.
and
Thank you
spending
very
your time
much.
with us. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Right. So any further thoughts about that before we go on to future meetings and things like that?
Fascinating subject, isn't it?
It is fascinating, and
How
as I say,
to generate an income out of saving nature.
Yeah. And Luke, sorry, you said this was your sort of daily bread. So could you just explain to me what your daily bread is? Because I wasn't sure.
Carbon is my daily bread in terms of I work for the University of Reading. I'm an energy officer, and we are currently using SALEX funding money to decarbonise the university with a water source heat pump. This is using an aquifer at the University of Reading. So we've drilled 420 metre boreholes. This is where I talked about asking the question about carbon. Lots of organisations are looking at their water sources close to them to utilise as heat sources, because most rivers, so we've even got a project looking at the Thames has a constant temperature. You can take out 4 degrees, turn it back to the river, and use it as heating. So which is just low carbon heating options. Obviously doing air source heat pumps. The University of Reading has just bought a massive farm stretching a large part of the Wylye Valley, and we're selling. Part of that is to understand. I already understand part of our riparian kind of obligations, but we're looking at different models about.
Okay, thanks for that. So you're a potential mine of information on a whole area of a different area of land use or river use anyway, or other aspects. Thank you. Moving on, we talked this morning on our agenda is about meetings going forward. And just to update anybody who wasn't that meeting, some of us were on that meeting, know what's coming, and some of us don't. So the land use meeting at one stage, it was going to go to every other month, but we would like to focus on speakers as and when we can get them. So the consensus is that we'll see when our speakers can speak to us, so that on average we'll have a speaker perhaps every other month, but it might be 2 months and then a bit of a gap and so on. So the land use meetings, so really could you look out for them, because they might not be as regular, they will be irregular in a regular sort of way. They're the 3rd Monday of the month, and hopefully that's something that we can get used to. We've got the work that Bill has been doing. So Bill, do you just want to speak about that briefly, in the consultation period, which runs out on the 20th
I think at the moment
of September?
we've got
it's coming out.
Yeah, we've got the National Planning Policy Framework response going into government on the 25th of September, which we've been working on for the last couple of months. That's going out to all members tonight, so you can see what we're going to be saying. Welcome for any comments back. We're not going to be able to handle major changes now, but if you spot anything that's utterly ridiculous in our comments, it's quite a long document now. It's 28 pages of response to the government. But I think from a land use perspective, it's all about planning, and it does have quite a lot about nature recovery and all that sort of thing in it. And getting back to the biodiversity again, that's a particular issue in the planning documentation. So what I would appreciate is if anybody wants to take our statements and make use of them themselves, or for their group, if they've got a group they're working in, to actually send a response in as well, to aim particularly at that sort of issue, to make sure that the biodiversity again is, we want it to be local. We want it to be if not near the developments that are going on, but if it's in the county, at least we're getting the benefit locally, and we're not seeing it floating away to somewhere far distant, which has been all that has happened to it so far. So large tracts of lands in Cornwall have been bought up by speculators to sell for biodiversity gain, but they're now in the difficult position, not being able to demonstrate how they're getting biodiversity net gain. So it's all a bit of a mess, and I think that needs a lot of look by the government. It's not part of MPPF that they do that, but the challenge is actually to make it a real benefit, not like the carbon offsets, which has been a disaster. So I would suggest
Bill,
that
is that
maybe
the
in a couple of
so
months.
Bill, is that the major thrust of the response?
Oh no, there's an awful lot of stuff
Is-
in there.
There's an awful lot of stuff.
Claire,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's fairly
So-
complex, relating to everything from climate change through to land use in green belt and green field, and the fact that the government are proposing to open up green belt to make use of grey belt, what they call previously used land, previously developed land, where it's been used for something before, but can now be. They're saying that if it's in green belt, it could now be used for some development. So watch that space. I think they're trying to be fairly careful with it. So it's not but it could end up being a bit of a disaster if they don't manage it properly. And that's part of the commentary we've made, how they manage all of that, because the amount of green belt we have in Wiltshire is actually quite small. Most of it is that green field. There are only specific areas which are green belt, and therefore they made the big distinction between the two, and we're trying to say it's all the same. A green field should not be developed on, like green belt should not be developed on, unless absolutely necessary, and all brownfield sites should be used first. All that sort of stuff is going into our response. So
have you said anything about new settlements? Is there anything about new settlements in there in our response?
Not a specific section on a new town, no. Although we've debated that long and hard, and I think that's an issue that maybe come up. There's not one planned for Wiltshire anyway, as far as I'm aware. But it's in some ways, if you took it,
Well,
it
we
would
did have
work
one
quite well,
locally a long time ago, but it's probably died the death, which was when I say a new settlement, I don't mean Milton Keynes, I mean a small settlement, Firs Down,
okay.
east of Salisbury.
Anyway, I really have to take some time out now because I've got to get it finished off, Claire. So if you don't mind, let guys talk about it some more. And the big questions I'll leave you with for those other guys that have left is we're trying to get people to give us land use type debate in our meetings. So if you've got any ideas about where we should attempt to get people to talk to us about that, please let us know. Please let Claire particularly know, but any of us in the group, Julian or Jackie or me, just let us know. I'd like to hear something about this from this group who are doing work in land use. And maybe it's farmers, maybe we want to get some farmers to come and talk to us again, whatever. But let us know. Give us some ideas about what you'd like to hear. Good idea. CPRE would be a good one to have with us. But I'll leave that with you guys to sort of chuck around for the next 5-10 minutes. But CPRE is a good starting point. Whether we agree with all their policies and ideas, I don't know. I'm a member, but I don't agree with some of it. Solar panels are one thing that is an issue in NPPF, and they've obviously got a very different view of it than maybe some in WCA have. But I'll leave that, and that's a really good one maybe to pick up for us to pick up, Claire.
Okay, fair enough. You need to get on,
I won't
Bill.
get this
you
done
sound
by midnight.
like a man who's got a very limited time. So thanks very much, Bill. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so just following on from that, has anybody of those of us who are left got pressing desires on a particular topic that you'd like to hear from in the land use meeting?
I think I'll just carry on from that conversation just then. For me, I think land management discussions around wind turbines and solar arrays are a big conversation on the target to reduce the UK's net zero carbon approach to our national grid. They can only do it by adding those sites. Well, sorry, there's another one to add to that, is nuclear. But I think everyone would prefer solar panels and wind turbines to having a nuclear power plant just outside their door. that is the progression of where, the UK infrastructure is going. And how do we proportion each county to generate X amount, or look at how everyone does it? I know there's lots of different planning and other issues there, but yeah, definitely an interesting one.
Yes, I mean, that is an interesting topic, isn't it? Given the different nature of different counties, mountainous, flat, or whatever, how do you share out the load? I mean, it is a very, it's a justice issue, isn't it, really?
So there is,
in terms of food production as well, as to how this load. I'm particularly thinking of the issues in Norfolk and Suffolk with the issues over the infrastructure to bring the offshore wind ashore, which I've sort of clocked into recently. Kate, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I've got an interesting problem. We're sort of getting into Pusey. We were challenged by our farmers cluster. We had a really good meeting earlier in March. And they're doing amazing things around Pusey Downs, right the way down to the canal and the river. And really kind of pushed in our place. And then Pusey popped up as having not only a real flooding issue now, where it's never flooded before, but also we've come up as moderate to severe heat stress, because we've just got massive heat stress, because we've got massive amounts of tarmac, no trees, lots of roofs, and everybody's saying, oh, the town, the village looks a little bit drab because there aren't any trees. There are trees down, so to get light or cheaper to manage. And one of the things I'm interested in is if we've got the landscape regeneration, can we start thinking about some of our bigger villages and towns in terms of a townscape regeneration? So does it mean, for example, we can all ad hoc put our solar panels up, but what do we do to, take up great areas of tarmac that are just pouring into the drains and pouring into the river? And I just wondered if anybody has thought about this or done anything on that level and that scale, so that the towns are actually integrated into the bigger sort of landscape, as it were. Because Warminster, sitting upstream of the Wylye, got the same problem as we have in here in Pusey. It's just pouring water off roofs and tarmac into the Wylye. So it must be something. I don't know. Has anybody looked at it?
I think they're doing great work in China and Holland about really greening their buildings and their cities, because particularly in areas where it's obviously when they're very hot in the summer, the difference having a good cover of trees makes is absolutely massive, and also obviously stabilization for water. But I don't know what's going on, if there's any initiatives in the UK going on at all.
I know. I mean, just all our buildings, if they just had solar panels put onto them, that immediately cools down. I mean, as I've learned in my attic, temperatures drop by 5 degrees just by having a layer of solar panels across the roof. So this, back to your question, Luke, how are we going to generate the power? Why is it that the landscape has to take the biggest hit, where our towns and villages haven't got the kind of village-wide or town-wide restoration, reclamation, what's the word, regeneration? And I wondered who's thinking about it.
Well, that comes in part of the urban development part of councils and stuff like this. And whenever they
there's no money.
But when trees and stuff get put back in, they're now all put in restricted planters. So they have a feed tube down into the pot.
Yeah, no, but that's like peanuts. That's just one little tree. I can get a grant for 25 trees, no problem at all, but we're on it. We're mapping where we're going to put the trees and water planters and, all of that. But that's just a little bite on the back of the gnat. What we really need is a whole village-wide land reclamation, something to drive it forward. Can we get carbon offsets by putting up solar panels, putting in a ground source heat pump when we take up a car park? I'm just thinking around, how do we make ourselves as a village
That's where
Generate our own power. Why do we have to keep
CICs
giving
have
it
come into place to do that.
CIC? What's CIC?
Community interest company. So you set up an interest company, you get
Oh,
people. So I'm part of Reading Community Energy, and it's a community-based thing. So you go out, you say, I want to put solar panels on a bus, Reading buses building, and that's going to power X amount of buses a year.
yeah, but again, it's just
But
piecemeal.
it comes from people investing in that system, and then once the investment is filled, you then pay for that project, and that's done. And then off the shares that have kind of accumulated by the profits of once it's established, you then set up your next. These are about community-based power solutions to a bigger problem. So the one I didn't say that actually hydro is another one that we can add. There's Oxford and Reading have both got ones. They've got corkscrews
Yeah.
in the rivers and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
but they're all funded by community interest companies, which used to be all just
so
charities.
that does the energy side of it. How do we then integrate that with the reclamation of getting rid of the tarmac and putting trees in, putting rain gardens in, putting in water storage?
Then you've got to be challenging the council,
right?
Because
okay. Well, leave it with me. I'll carry on having a little tantrum on my sofa and I'll think of something. But that's useful. Thank you very much.
Because roads and tarmac is all theirs, grey infrastructure.
Yeah, but once they put it down, and once the developer put it down, well, who takes it up?
What? Sorry, takes it
once
up
the
as
developer has made a car park, covered it in tarmac, bang. 10 years ago, and they've been backing it up since. Who would be responsible for taking it all back up again and saying, come on, let's just be a bit more sensible about this?
So are you wanting to, I mean, this piece of tarmac, okay, is that actually your, I mean, the Pewsey car park?
It belongs to, no. I mean, I'm getting ticked off because I've got all, I've got weeds growing up through my concrete merrily, it's lovely.
Yeah.
It's a huge area in the centre of the village where it is literally probably a football field size area of concrete on a 30-degree slope.
Yeah, I see.
And it's just roaring water down into little French gullies, which, just fill up and, can't cope. And it's generating a heat. When I went out at 5:30 on the 19th of June, the air temperature above it was 34 degrees centigrade, and the ground temperature was 46. You can't stand on that for very long.
No.
So it's a big problem, and it belongs to the county council, county council, I think, and the Bouverie 4 belongs to the parish council. And there's no money to do it. I mean, everyone's getting really interested. My God, why aren't we planting more trees and have trees live in tarmac? Kind of questions. But it needs to be much more holistically thought about. So I agree. We can do community energy company by putting solar panels up on the old playing fields, for example, which are very non-biodiverse at the moment. It makes it up to improve them. We have heat pumps into the pool. We've got a biomass boiler for the community centre. So we've got all these one-off little projects going on. But when it comes to a landscape restoration and a houndscape restoration, is there the equivalent for bringing it all together? And that's my question. Why are the towns bringing the burden to the countryside? You generate our power for us. You do our biodiversity for us. That's an interesting question, isn't it? It's back to the justice thing, Claire.
Well, it is back to justice, but I mean, one of the issues about the grey infrastructure for me as well is that how does that compute with access to green space?
Correct.
And I mean, just access to any space, however green it might be. Because I think that is now I can't think where it is to be found, but it's certainly one of, maybe is it in the planning framework? The the ambition for everybody to have access to green space, because that's a whole debate around taking grey areas which become green space. I mean, I can think of areas where they're been left for years and years and years, and they actually become the only open space for certain people to access, which are now going to be built on and intensified, taking away the only open space if you want to play football or whatever you want to do from people. So I can see a big conflict between grey belt in that way, and green, the conventional idea of the green belt. But with regard to that, that's an area of land. So you really you need to approach it as an area of land. Not that I'm
I'm not interested
not that
in
I've
that.
got
I'm not
anything
I'm not interested in just, doing one little plot here and another little
No.
planning application. It's
No.
how do we get the whole village to think of us as a landscape that, we can actually get to be generating our own power. Not everybody's got a south-facing roof, but how do we generate our own power? How do we make ourselves sufficient?
Well,
how do we stop the
that
flooding?
goes back to the local energy bill, doesn't it?
Yeah, but that
goodness
energy,
knows what's
again,
happened to
just
that.
one energy is just one piece.
Yes, but
You know.
what I'm getting at, the problems with local projects, and I think Hannah mentioned that at one point, was that there are certain things that are too expensive for very small players to buy into, and that's the problem with the local energy. Now, if you're going to have a whole plan, you're having an interface of different layers of things, regulatory things relating to energy, regulatory things relating to transport, regulatory things relating to
exactly.
But you
exactly.
then have
So,
a multifaceted approach to all of this stuff, which we
Yeah.
never have. We have you either are, this is why I get argued, I'm an energy guy at the University of Reading. Well, no,
Yeah.
I'm just a guy who shouts most about energy, really.
Yeah, exactly.
But the example I'll give is a bunch of flats over the road from where I am. They've just had new tiles put on, new insulation put in. Anyone think about putting solar panels? It's a three-story flat with south facing across the whole thing. At least something to pay for those flats. Obviously, they're owned by the council, but no one's done that. And it's a missed opportunity while they had all the scaffolding up to do that. But that's because, just like our roads, the water guys come down, they tear up the road. Then the energy guys come down, tear up the road. And then someone else comes along for the network, tears up the road. 3 bits, the same bit of road gets torn up, put down. A, it's a waste of effort. B, it's cost. And C, it's damage to constant because you're laying that much more tarmac. But no one will connect up because it's a costly thing. There's a costly connection.
Can I just say something here? The National Planning Policy Framework will, I think, not just develop grey land, but there will be a duty on developers to actually have, for example, solar panels on all new roofs. I heard that from somebody recently.
That just got kicked out of Parliament.
What, when?
So they kicked out the reduction of all gas boilers. So gas boilers will still go into new homes, and solar panels are an option. They're not a standard.
That's really sad because it's obvious they need to be mandatory on roofs rather than putting them in fields, which we need for food, frankly. But also, there is this biodiversity thing which has gained a lot more momentum now. And so I'm on the local parish council, and there's always some money available for towns and villages to spend on things like ponds, wildlife areas, planting trees, whatever. So, Kate, it's not that bad. I agree that if you've got a large expanse of concrete, yeah, it'd be great to do something with it. You need somebody imaginative to come forward with an idea and sell it to the local council. Maybe they'll get some SIL money from developers, you see, and they could do something with that car park then.
Thanks. I'll keep dreaming.
Okay. Right. So it's after 7:30. So has everybody had their fill of the meeting? We've all expressed ourselves, and everybody's said something here, and some people have gone home. So thanks very much, everybody, and watch this space as to what we're doing next. Okay.
Thank you very much, Claire. Lovely meeting. Very interesting.
Okay. Thank you. Thank
Can't
you,
wait
everybody.
for a WCA tour of the reclaimed Wylye.
It will be, yeah, it will be a thing. But in the meantime, if you want to come to Salisbury, do come and have a look at the River Park project, because a lot of what has been talked about is quite resonant with the Avon just near me, with the flood meadows and so on. I think the diversion and the new fish weirs, it's worth, if you're coming to Salisbury, do have a look at the new River Park project.
So where does one see that? Because I know, obviously, I know the car park is almost no go.
Well, it's all sort of finishing soon. That's what they said last month and the month before. No, it is finishing soon, and so you will be able to park in the car park and go up through the valley, right up past the new areas, the new art trail. There's lots of good things there.
Yeah.
Lots of good areas there. I haven't explored it myself yet, but there's lots of interesting things like the new fish weirs to allow the fish to pass, the new cycleways to, when it's eventually done, hopefully, to allow more segregation, and so on, and just a lot more capacity for the river to spill and re-wet to prevent flooding further downstream. So we're very, very lucky to have had that investment, and it does. When people first saw it, why have they cut down the trees? Why are they doing this? Is it all worth it? But it's an amazing piece of engineering work, which is worth a look see if you can.
Brilliant.
If you're coming past anyway. Yeah. Okay, so thanks everybody. Thanks for coming, and be in touch. Keep in touch. Yeah, see you all soon. Oh, I was going to save my chat down here, so there we go. And yeah, be in touch. Thanks then. Bye bye. Hello, Julian. Bye.